I'm a top 1%er in the nation. You know, I mean, you're busting past 80 to 100 mil a year in volume, and that's obtainable.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Break It Down with Braydon. I got Anthony Marinaccio on with me today. Anthony, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Anthony and I have known each other for going on 3 years now.
Yeah, at least,
2.5,
right?
3 years, something like that.
We ran into each other at Schmooze.
Schmooze, that's right. Yep.
Remember?
Anthony's a phenomenal lender at Guaranteed Rate, branch manager, been a huge proponent of the Saguaros and the Scottsdale 2030 Club, been a huge supporter of ours, so extremely grateful for you and all of your support you've given the club over the years, and just been a good friend now, and excited to have you on, bud. So Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into the biz and how you got here today.
Yeah, actually, I tripped into mortgages. I was working in radio sales, hated it, right out of college, interned there, did a really phenomenal job with an internship project where we tried to basically get restaurants advertised on the radio station, and everybody wanted to, but nobody wanted to pay for it.
Yep.
So
Sounds all right.
I created a website that sold gift certificates at half price, and we worked in trade. So we ran filler commercials, and at the tail end of the commercial, we would do a restaurant of the week, and we worked in trade, and the thing generated like 60 G's in revenue in like 90 days. It was like Groupon before Groupon.
Yeah.
So that was the internship. Then they hired me out of college, and one of the leads they gave me was for a mortgage company. And luckily, I had a scholarship in college for swimming and diving, and I never had debt. So I was like, well, I understand the concept of a mortgage, but I don't really know how they operate. And as a minimum, I think maybe I can come out of this thing educated better than I am now.
Yeah.
So I jumped in and haven't looked back. And then we went through 2008, had a mortgage crisis, I call it. Everyone calls it a housing crisis. It's definitely a mortgage crisis.
Yep.
But I teetered on going to law school, and I said, you know what, I'm just staying in this thing. And what I had found were after corrections like these, which we've been in many corrections, but those were the times where I made the most incremental jumps in my career right outside of those corrections. So when we all kind of come into these, I kind of welcome them. They suck.
Yep.
But, dude, they get a lot of people out that shouldn't be in here. And then the doors are wide open for a lot of people, which is fantastic.
I always keep using the terminology, cleaning the herd.
Yeah, right?
It's definitely happening.
Yeah.
It seems like every day I'm talking to somebody getting out of the mortgage business, getting out of the title business, getting out of real estate in general.
Yeah.
Just looking for a new career path. And,
it's a cleanse.
It's kind of nice. Yeah.
It is kind of nice because, like, if you look at other professions like doctors or attorneys, like if there's some type of hardship in that industry, they're usually not going to get out because of the amount of education they had to put into it, right?
Yep.
So I kind of welcome these times. I hate to see people go. It's bittersweet because I'm a branch manager running a team, so I see guys leave, and I see hardship in their lives. But on the flip side of it, kind of is what it is, you know, and if you can't get through that time, maybe you're not cut out.
Yeah.
But,
I feel like what we're seeing right now is the people that are actually putting in the time, putting in the energy, and putting in the actual work are actually doing okay. But
they
those
are.
That the last couple of years have just been answering phones and being a call center, and as opposed to actually being on the phone themselves or making those engagements themselves are struggling right now. And it's tough to see, but it's kind of the reality.
When rates were low, it was awesome monetarily. It sucked for growing business.
Yep.
I hated it. I was just answering the phone all day. It's like, oh, you're having record months. I'm like, yeah, this is terrible.
I'm not complaining, but yeah.
I love it, but like I'm not growing. I'm just sitting here, you know. I'm like a bank teller.
Yep.
So it's nice to have some freedom in my life to take some steps back and redo some things. But grew my business for 20 years in Chicago and saw the writing on the wall pre-COVID that Chicago had a long way to fix themselves. So I got out, sold on my real estate, bought stuff here, and made the transition. And then COVID kind of happened, and I got lucky on that hedge.
Yeah.
And here I am.
What's been your experience in Arizona so far?
I love it here.
Yep.
People are good. You know what I love about Arizona? I think it's just the coast in general. People that grew up in what I would believe is maybe slightly better educated families, more wealth, more drive to be successful, and maybe entrepreneurship where they're doing more than one or two things. It's really common on the coast. In the Midwest, it's like head down, grind, do one thing really well.
Yeah.
So what has helped my perception in life is getting out here and seeing that there's a lot of wealthy people. There's wealthy people in Illinois, but I think when you make wealth in Illinois, in Chicago, everyone just moves out and they go to the coast.
Yep.
So it's really refreshing to see what a lot of young adults are doing based on their upbringing here and really just kind of being tech forward and doing more with their lives than really anyone I knew in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite part.
Yeah, it seems like everyone here is trying to make the same amount of money they're making today, but while working less by implementing more systems to automate things to allow more freedom. But also they still want all of the same rewards of making the same amount of money. So
Totally.
it's definitely a different perspective out here. I would completely agree. You go to like the East Coast states, New York, Chicago, and stuff. Everyone's like the hustle and bustle is real there, and it's a 9 to 5. And
it's a rat race.
Yeah, it's a rat race. Yeah. I literally agree with that. And we're here. Things are relaxed, and
they are.
As much as people have the drive, they also want to spend time with their family and their friends, and
they find time.
And they find time. Yeah,
and they do. They use technology to free up some of their time.
Yep,
for sure. So that's interesting. So I'm slowly growing my business in Arizona. I don't need a ton of it here. So I'm not like on the gung-ho chase and taking it the hard way where you know how some of these partnerships can be with some people, which is very stressful and it isn't very taxing on the industry. So luckily I've got good business nationally so I can kind of slow play here and just organically grow with people and become friends first and then let that domino fall after. Yep. So that's been my favorite part.
I know you're huge on coaching. Kind of talk a little bit how you've implemented that into your business.
Yeah. So God, interesting enough, regurgitating the same thing over and over and over gets exhausting, especially when you're managing people.
Yep.
But what I've realized when I bring a new hire on, I believe there's 5 very sound pillars to the mortgage business, and we can go on and on and on and on for forever. But every time I hire somebody who's doing very well, 40, 50 million a year in production, they're usually good at 1 to 1.5 of those pillars. So we sit down, restructure, introduce the rest of those pillars, and then they take off with their business. So my goal is to always get everybody into what I call a 10%er, which is outpacing 90% of the market. I try to get them to expand their business outside of just one marketplace so that they can balance out in times that are rough or strong.
Yep.
And then after that, once they've got what I believe is the core basic for being in this industry and having really sound structure in those pillars, which includes non-for-profit and things of that matter, then we drive it, taking them into a 1%er. And where I believe that 1%er starts to come into play, it's when you make a shift of turning yourself into a CEO, even if you're within a business. Yep. I call it a franchise model. It's like, here are all the things that you need to be wildly successful. Then we start to dissect the issues that cause like bog time or slowdown in their production and really just put a microscope on it and hold them accountable, because naturally by nature, mortgage guys, they like to blame everybody else. Oh, I couldn't get it done, the appraiser, whatever, right? Yeah. It's like, well, dude, when the deal came in the door and you realized you had 12 days to get it done, why don't you just bump it out a couple extra days the day it came in? Yep. That's less stressful than doing it on day 18, because then everybody flips out, right? Or, every now and then I'll go into well-producing guys' pipeline, and I'll look at the executed dates that they've filled out within the system, and their clear to close dates are after the escrow date. I'm like, dude, nobody's going to open up your file. Everyone that touches your file in the entire company, they're not going to open up and look at your sales contract and fix your mistakes. They're just hammering down based on looking at their system and the dates within the system. Yep. Swap them. Or then sometimes you got a client that's just not tech savvy. They got to drop all their paperwork off. They bring you, 3 sets of tax returns with a staple in it. You got to unstaple it and scan it. Yep. It's double-sided. And you got, these days it's harder to figure out the double scan button on the damn thing. But, that's an indication that, especially if you're doing a refinance, Lock that deal 30, 60, 90 days past your expected close date so you never have to visit it again.
Right. Yeah. If
And
you
you're
close it
never-
early, great, and
Yeah.
you've exceeded expectations.
Like having a conversation with people that aren't tech savvy about having to extend their rate, like, dude, that's bad. Want to get rid of it? Lock it for 9 months.
Right.
And just don't look back. So when I introduced when I implemented those strategies into my business, I would have loans closing and they'd still have 60-day locks on them on purchases.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this guy's kind of hard to deal with, or maybe he's not tech savvy. So those are the things that get you to 1%, because then you're out of your business. And everybody else is set up to operate and get it done well and effectively, and they don't have to re-involve you in these hurdles that you've created for yourself. And then you get these loan officers like, oh, man, it's a processing fault. It's like, I don't think it is, man. I think the expectations weren't designed right. Let's just fix it. Let's take a little ownership.
Yep.
I'll let them complain, and then we'll look back. And I don't just point the finger, but I think you get it.
Yeah.
So there's growth and adaption. Then there's 10% or baseline, and then once you've really established that baseline, then that 1%er is pretty easy to get to. Yeah. 1%ers. I'm a top 1%er in the nation. You're busting past 80 to 100 mil a year in volume, and that's obtainable.
Yeah.
Especially at a company that has a national footprint.
Absolutely. Yeah. Talk a little bit about G-Rate.
Guaranteed Rate is the largest non-bank mortgage lender in the nation. We did about $116 billion in total volume last year, and all we focus on is mortgages. So the value there is we're not worried about business banking and checking and savings, and we don't have all these other things that are going on that we're responsible from a branch perspective of holding in margins on. So the value there by focusing just on mortgages is we don't have many disruptors, but we only focus on moving paper efficiently. So that's all we really focus on, is just how can we better the mortgage process. What I love about tech companies that come in, and we all know who some of these tech companies are and how they try to disrupt the industry. You're getting a mortgage. Like, you need an educated human on the end of that phone call to really just calm you down or coach you through that lending process up front and really just simplify it so well that the rest of it's easy. Yep. But if you just call a call center because they got a great rate, and maybe it's an eighth of a difference, and every eighth of an interest rate is about $8 per 100,000. That means if you're doing $1 million mortgage and the interest rate is an 8% difference, it's $80 a month. And most of that is principal at some point.
Yep.
So it's probably like $60 in interest. I would think that your mortgage and your family and it's worth the difference, right?
Having the wherewithal and understanding of actually what you're getting yourself into.
So those companies actually help us look better once they thrive and fail a couple times.
Yep.
Because then it's like back to, all right, we need the best of both worlds. And that's what I think Guaranteed Rate does really well. We don't overpay our loan officers. I mean, some of these margins that these other companies are paying, it's like, did you need to get paid that much?
Right.
Like, don't you think it's probably better just to do more volume and help more families and, give them better rates?
Yep.
So that's probably another kicker. And that leaves a little more money left over for the company to do some of that real heavy marketing that a lot of the guys in the streets aren't going to do, right?
Yep.
So, we've got Guaranteed Rate Bowl here in Arizona. We own the marketing rights to Sox Stadium in Chicago.
Saw that, yep.
We sponsor bags, badminton, axe throwing competitions. It's tough to get that exposure when you're overpaying loan officers, and then they're there complaining that there's not enough.
Yeah, I feel like Guaranteed Rate is on everything now. Pickleball tournaments, you name it. You guys are on
So
it.
if you have a bad experience from a bad loan officer with our company, even, in the nation, right?
Yep.
It's probably pretty sour to see that come up every time. But if you have a good experience, it's a nice reminder that, you've been through that process with them.
Yep.
So and that's what I love about Arizona. People don't really know who we are. Like, if you go into Chicago and you throw a rock out the window, you're hitting 5 loan officers.
Yep.
Or if you're like, you want to meet a real estate agent, they're like, I got 20 of you guys, right? So
Yep.
It's tough to grow your business. So when I made the transition to Guaranteed Rate, I knew I was leaving Chicago. That was like that was a prerequisite to joining the company.
Got it.
So coming out here, everyone's like, dude, I've never really heard of your company. And then, they meet me and they're like, oh, this guy's cool. And we do a deal together and it goes smooth and they kind of get used to the branding. Then I get a call a couple of days later, like, dude, you guys are everywhere. It's like, yeah, we are, which is cool.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Chicago's market versus Arizona.
So in 2018, we just built a house, 7,800 square feet, golf simulator in the basement, just this powerhouse of a home. I found a really good lot. I'm all about acquisition. I think that's where you make money in real estate, on the buy side.
Yep.
And then what I typically do is I try to build because there's just margin in there that you can't compete with. And yeah, you give a little bit up to the builder, but like, who cares? Maybe you pay him, 10 G's a month to get your house done. You got 120 out of your margin on a really decent sized home, but there's still enough left over for you. So we built this house and loved it, and we felt like we were really settled. And I was 21 miles from my garage to the city, and it took me an hour and a half at some point to get into the city, 21 miles. And I lived in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Chicago. So in doing mortgages, I know how much people make. And for me, it was like, dude, the next city over was like another 26 miles back. So, they're driving 47 miles, which isn't bad. Yeah. But in Chicago, that's like a 2.5 hour commute each way.
I was going to say, it sounds pretty bad.
And as I'm going in and out of the city, all the bridges are still eroding away from the last mortgage crisis since 2008. Like, dude, this city has an infrastructure issue. It's got a problem with basically being able to sustain growth. I was like, dude, this city's destined to just get demolished, like absolutely murdered. One more recession and this city's in trouble. So I was trying to convince my wife in 18 to move. She's like, no. Then in 19, she's kind of starting to see the writing on the wall with me. That's when we sold everything and bought a bunch of land up here.
Yep.
And because I built homes, I went fix with the contractor on a home out here. So when everybody was dealing with all of the spikes in inflation on materials in like 2020, when I was, 25% started on my build, because I was fix with my contractor, at least he was smart enough to buy all the materials and house them in his garage. Like, he has a warehouse.
That's good. Yeah, otherwise you would have been probably screwed.
Yeah. And what do? They just push the buck down.
Right.
Because I build houses and that's how it works. Like, they're like, oh, I'm misquoted. And it's like, well, dude, that's your fault. And he's like, unfortunately, you're going to have to pay for it. Yeah.
It's on
you want your house, it's on you, right? So, yeah, made that transition. And obviously, everybody knows the adjustments in values in Arizona. I think a majority of that, which is heavily weighing in inflation in Arizona, that's just you guys catching up to the norm. I mean, when I first was looking, before I bought land in Arizona, I mean, I actually had a commercial loan approved for $3.5 million. I was just going to come out here and buy all the land I could find.
Yeah.
So I took care of myself first. Then we had all of our fixed contracts with our builder, and then COVID hit. They turned the switch off on that construction loan, which I still made out on my own house. But if I dumped $3.5 million into dirt in Arizona, then would have been worth $9 million.
Yep.
And I would have been cash out, and I still would be cranking mortgages.
Yep.
Because I just like the process of cleaning operations, basically. But Chicago was up 0.05% in appreciation. 0.05. Like, I still have clients that buy in Chicago and they do it in the suburbs for their family, but to me, if you're single and you're looking for a condo in the city, don't.
Good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's just silly.
Yeah.
If you need to live in Chicago, then rent. But if you got money to put down on real estate, dude, just go buy in a different market and let it sit there.
Yeah.
Rent it out and get margin.
You're just not going to get the appreciation and everything.
It's impossible, man. Because every time even if you buy an investment property and you're like, no, I'm making $1,000 a month, right? Which is impossible in Chicago. It's very tough. But then they just raise taxes on you. I had a condo in Chicago, high rise. I was on the 11th floor. 855 square feet that I had rented. My taxes were 7 G's, and my HOA dues were $580 a month. Gym, door guy, right? Like, that's insane.
Yep.
Those two things alone, like, every $500 is about $100,000 in financing. I mean, dude, that was like $280,000, $300,000 in financing just on fixed burn.
Right.
Like, dude, this is silly. That's another investment property,
Yep.
So they got a lot of issues in Chicago they got to clean up, man. But I do a lot nationally. I do a lot on the East Coast. New York got hammered. New Jersey reaped the benefits. Florida reaped the benefits. Now you're starting to see some migration back because the food and lifestyle is just not the same. And people with uber wealth, I think maybe they just needed to get out of New York because it was closed down.
Right.
But now that it's kind of coming back, they're like, let's go. They go back.
Yeah.
But they, a lot of them keep their real estate in Florida.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Other predictions for the real estate market? What do you think is going on with interest rates right now? What is the Fed doing?
Yeah, this is easy. When you make money really cheap and you're using taxpayers' dollars to buy that money, you got to clean it up. Like, who wants to buy a 2.99 bond, mortgage-backed security? Nobody.
Yep.
So the purpose of reducing rates at that time was designed to get people to spend. Initially, drop rates, get the refinance. Households on average probably saving $600 a month. Nobody's saving that.
Right.
They're going to dump it in the economy, and that's what they wanted.
Yep.
And then once that kind of fell off, then they dipped them even lower, and those people might have refinanced again. But it sparked the housing market, and people were out buying like crazy, right? So the purpose of that was typically when you buy a house, well, what do you do after you buy a house? You buy a bunch of crap.
Yep. Got to furnish it somehow
Right?
or whatever.
Rugs, furniture, painting, appliances, lighting, right? Everything.
Yep.
There's a statistic out there. I have a very hard time finding it, but I'm sure you'd be pretty good at digging this up. And I don't really dig too hard on it, but I like to, throw it out there all the time. Apparently, every single family home that sells puts 4 people to work. So when you're trying to figure out a way to beat a pandemic and you're worried about people losing their jobs, if you make money cheap and you stimulate the economy with housing and people need furniture and whatever else comes with it,
plenty of jobs are going to come up.
There's going to be jobs because the demand is there and money's so cheap, people are spending it, right? So in 2020, there's a statistic that everybody hears about. More Americans saved money than ever in the history of reporting that number. Well, what do you think the Fed's going to do?
Right.
They want it, dude.
Yep. Give me the money.
So what happens? Pump the rates up, bleed them out, get that cash back into the market again. That's all they're doing. So is it challenging? Yes. Could you have foreseen it coming? Dude, if you think we're going to sit around at 2.99 rates forever, like, you're living on the moon. It's unrealistic. And the fact that we'll go into another stat here in a minute, but like, you got to prepare for the fact that we're going to have to clean that up. And one way to clean it up is overreact. Government always overreacts, right? I've got more people in their 60s right now buying second homes than they ever have. Because in 1980, right, when they were 20, rates were 20%. We're sitting at 5.99 today. Even at 6.99, that's normal. Yeah. Right? Maybe it's a little inflated, but like, you should always be predicting, even if rates drop to 2.99. If I'm buying a house and I'm new at buying a house, I'll go back and look at the 30-year history on interest rates. I'll take the average rate and maybe I'll plan my budget based on that. Yeah. Because it's probably a safe bet, right? But yeah, older people buying second homes like crazy right now, as they should be. Yeah. And they're like, I don't care about the rate. Like, there's so much inventory out there right now. I can buy whatever I want.
Yeah, it seems like people now actually have to be a little bit more conscientious as to what they're buying, and it's more of what is required for their lifestyle right now, as opposed to like all the desires and stuff they were looking for in the prior, which is
kind of tough to do when you just came from a 0% interest rate market. Yep. Right. Yep. I mean, it's even hard for me and my family, but got to do it. Yep. Needs and wants. Yep. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I think everyone's kind of doing that right now. It's like it's literally what you said. It's needs and wants. It's what is required right now for our livelihood, and what is something that we actually just want to have.
So there's a really cool statistic out there that it's basically a graph, right? And here's your flat line, and there's people that save money, and then hit recessions and spend it all. Then they save it and they spend it and they don't go under the line. And then there's people that spend all their money and they go in debt, then they save again, and they come back up to that line. But they're always on that straight line, right? But then there's another person in that mix where they're investing in real estate and they're buying things, and that graph's increasing. And they're doing the same stepping pattern, whether they save and spend or they debt and pay back. Yep. But dude, they're going up. So it's like if you can get yourself into that graph of going up, then you can disconnect from all this noise and not really like stress out about it because you've got assets that are growing.
Yep.
You know?
That's a good segue into the next question. So would you be buying today?
Absolutely, dude. I've got a lot in Whisper Rock. We talked about that.
Yep.
I don't like dealing with mortgage companies on dirt. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's hard to find.
Yeah.
So I called a private equity investor, hard money. I said, and I own it with a partner. So we took $350,000 out. We used the land as collateral, and we prepaid our interest up front. So they sent us the delta $315. If we pay it off early, they'll pay us back. I dumped that money in the market with Cal and John, and then I took a security-backed loan against it, which is basically a mortgage against your assets. That's already up 20%, because now is a great time to buy because everything's on sale. Now, housing may not feel like it's on sale.
Yep.
If rates rebound, you can refinance, but you always need a house. So I think what's great about the mortgage options these days is you've got access to capital. You use that for the down payment. Most people put too much money in their home.
Yep.
And I've learned that from 2008 because...
You mean on the actual initial down payment?
A down payment, downstroke, right?
Yep.
Whether you put 5% down on a house, 20%, or you pay cash, it's worth the exact same when you go to sell it.
Yep. I tell people that all the time. You're getting the same amount of
You're not-
appreciation, equity,
right?
everything. Like, what's the point of putting down more if you could still afford the down payment? Unless if you're going to hold it for a long term, or there's different reasons, obviously, but...
And discounting the rate, I can financially engineer a mortgage to pay less interest over 30 years with 5% down and investing in your interest rate than you can with 20% down at a fair market rate. Just run the amortizations on them.
Yep.
So, yes, way less down, less interest over 30 years with a larger loan amount. Take the rest, put it in the market, and yeah, you're going to see some volatility. Dude, Facebook's down 60%.
Yeah, no shit.
You think you think they're going to let that company fail?
Right.
Probably not.
Yep.
It's a tech company too, and if you look at where it had its initial growth line before it popped during COVID, which is some fake inflation, that's old technology. So once this thing cleans out, they're ahead of the curve on that technology. They're going to come back pretty hard.
Yep.
But that's just one example of something being on sale.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the stock market right now seems like it's on sale anyway,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
So it's a good time to buy stock.
Yep.
I don't know about crypto. I can't get comfortable with it.
Yep.
So I have a lot. I've got a house. We just actually put a contract on the Shea Homes in Desert Ridge, because my favorite part about that is all you do is write a check. There's no debt. There's no carrying costs. So if I don't want to move in, I'll just flip it and sell it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I might have
pay
to
the reserve essentially.
Yeah. I probably have to pay all the fees on all sides of it.
Yep.
If I don't move into it, but it's kind of like wholesaling.
Yep.
Right. I could, if I've got 500,000, I could go out and contract on 10 homes throughout Arizona in 10 different developments. And if those prices go up, I sell them all.
Yep.
If they don't, I could probably just rent them. Right.
Right.
But then I got to come to the table with mortgages. So that's a smart backup plan.
Sure.
Anyway, so I've got our house in Pinnacle Peak. We have a comp that is like unbelievable. 11 days sold just recently in the last couple of weeks. So to me, do I want to move? No. But I let the market tell me when to buy and move. The market's telling me right now, sell your house, dude. Like you have a comp down the street in a correction that hit a price point that is more than enough.
Yep.
And maybe you don't want to sell. So once I saw that sell, I was like, let's go buy Shea in their development. So we're contracted there. I'm going to sell my house, and I'm just going to start building on another lot.
Yeah.
And then if that house can make more money than the Shea home, I'll sell that one. And if Shea can make more than the other build, then I'll sell that one.
Yep.
And I'll make margin.
Yep.
You know?
I feel like that's what people are missing out today is people educated like yourself are still buying in today's market.
Totally.
And it's the educated people that are saying that it's a good time to be buying right now, but everyone that's on the fence or thinks the market's just going to absolutely crash and the housing market's going to zero.
And if it does, what do you do?
Where are they getting that information? Right.
Just buy more.
Right. Exactly.
I call this the grandfather effect, and I think this helps a lot of my clients. And when you look at like Anthony, the mortgage coach, it's like I'm not just coaching loan officers. I'm coaching life and real estate and mortgages, right? I call it the grandfather effect. If everybody still inherited the homes that our grandfathers bought the first time, we'd all be richer than hell.
Yep. Yeah, if our grandparents never sold any properties they ever owned and just
and look at how many
down generations.
Look at how many recessions we've gone through since they bought a house.
Which is funny because if you go abroad, you go to any Eastern European state or country or whatever, that's typically how real estate is transferred. It's a lot of times it's multi-generational. It's
totally.
A lot of times they'll live with their family members until that house is passed down to them, and then their grandparents have passed away or whatever, and now they're still in the house, and now they just take over that room.
Yeah.
I've got an Indian buddy that I'm doing some stuff with right now, and he still lives with his parents. And he was like, he's 28 years old, and he's like, I don't want to not live with my parents. I couldn't imagine not living with my parents. He's like, I have a phenomenal relationship with them. I get to eat all their amazing meals.
Right.
My laundry's taken care of. He's like, it's amazing. And eventually I'll probably be owning that same house.
Totally.
And it's just kind of interesting, the different kind of outlooks where like our outlook on it is like, oh, well, if you live with your parents, then you don't have a job and you're not doing all these things. My dad always jokes about it. He's like, we need to get a multi-generational house and we all move in together and just get this huge mansion. I'm like, no, but
maybe multi-unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what happens is they either assume the mortgage or they don't need to assume a mortgage because it's free and clear.
Paid off,
And then when they take deed, what do? They probably take a mortgage out.
Yep.
Because mortgages are actually good debt.
Yep.
Helps take you down tax bracket. I used to sit down with my CPA and figure out exactly how much interest I needed in the mortgage to bring myself down to 2 tax brackets. And I would actually go out and take a higher rate just so I had the interest write-off.
Yep.
And I'd come down 2 tax brackets, and I would get like $36,000 to $37,000 checks back from the IRS every year.
Yep.
Pay for my property taxes in Chicago. Doing the same thing here. Don't get as big of a return, but damn close.
Yeah.
So like the rate's a power game, but the flip side of that is like when people chase rate, we have great rates. We're consistently awesome. There's always somebody that beats us in every industry you can possibly think of.
Yep.
There's always somebody doing it cheaper.
Sure.
If you want good advice and sound advice, then you got to look for people that are gonna.
I think you said it really, really well. Is that you're not just a mortgage advisor? You're like a life coach almost, and like the fact that you're gonna look at all of their different circumstances and things that are going on in their life and figure out what is best for their circumstance. And not everybody fits in the same box. And I feel like that's really important that people actually talk to their mortgage advisors or mortgage coaches up front, so that way they could have that advice when making those decisions long term. Because like you said, if taking a higher interest rate is better for them, that might be what they should be doing. And so you actually got to look at those different factors and figure out what is best for their individual circumstance.
Agreed, man. My job is to present choice and let you decide what's good for you.
Yep.
But here's a great analogy, right? People typically put too much down because they want to drive that payment down. And maybe their payment went from, $3,000 to $2,500. Now they don't have any money in the bank. So now they're scrambling to save $1,500 to $2,000 a month just to get their savings back up. Why don't you just take a slightly higher payment and keep all your cash?
Right. Yeah, once you actually look at the difference in monthly payment, it's like, okay, really, what am I actually doing?
Every $10,000 you put down on a house is saving you $60 a month, and 40 of that's interest. So let's look at a calculator real quick. So you're saving $40. Because 20 of it's principal.
Yeah.
So it's like taking $20 out of your back pocket and putting it in your right pocket. If I take $10,000 and divide by the $40 of interest you're saving every month, that's 250 payments. That's 21 years. You're not even going to live there that long.
Right.
So put the minimum down and put your cash somewhere else. And again, you can financially engineer mortgages to pay less interest with 5% down and buying the rate down than 20% down at fair market.
I think that's also another factor people don't take into account is how long they're going to stay in the home as well. As everyone thinks, 30 years, I'm going to have this home for 30 years, when I think the average is like less than 7 now, something like that.
Totally,
And younger generations, it's probably even less than that.
Yeah.
Like my
especially in Arizona when your margins go up so fast.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, let's move.
Yep. Time to go to the next one.
Let's go get a bigger house and cash out and have roughly the same mortgage.
Yep.
Right? Agreed.
How are you coaching your agents right now?
Agents?
Yep.
You know what? Agents are fantastic people. They're very tough to coach.
Yep.
So what I primarily do with agents is I look for very like-minded agents. What I love about real estate agents is they will let you know really quickly if they don't like you.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part about it. So it's a numbers game with agents.
Yep.
I do a ton of work with financial advisors, a lot. It's an untapped market. these guys are looking for like-minded guys to sit down and analyze with them.
Yep.
I do a lot of coaching with those guys. So for me, I just get to go through and grow really quickly with really great agents that appreciate guys that bring that education process to the table.
Yep.
And that's a numbers game for me. And they're getting picked over like crazy with other loan officers.
Yeah.
And, 90% of them are like, well, what do you got for me? Yeah. Money? I guess, okay. So the difference is real estate agents, they need to close loans. They need to close deals to eat. Financial advisors don't necessarily.
Yep.
But when markets drop and their portfolios take a 30 to 40% hit, and those wealthy people want to buy homes, and they're going to come and liquidate even further, they're like, no, dude, get a mortgage.
Yep.
Right. So usually we're in front of extremely wealthy people that overly qualify. Very complicated deals, though.
Yep.
Multiple tax returns, things of that matter. So usually what I do with those clients is I take a two-pronged approach, which is there's reduced doc loans, slightly higher rates.
Yep.
And then there's extremely great rates where they interrogate the hell out of you. And I just go to the client and I say, here are the list of documents that I need for each rate. What do you want?
Yep.
And 100% of the time, they're like, I'll take that higher rate. I'm not doing this.
Right.
Or they'll be like, oh, I have a CPA. He'll do all that. Then they email the CPA, and the CPA is like, that's going to cost you $10,000. He's like, I'll take the higher rate.
Yep.
So it's like, slightly easier.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's part of the pillars that I infuse into loan officers' lives is like real estate agents, financial advisors, past clients, sphere, non-for-profit, hobby, and leads.
Yep.
If you're not doing all of that, you're never going to be a 1%er, dude.
Yeah.
If you're just chasing real estate agents, you might be a 1% for a couple of years. But if the market gets smoked out,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden you're losing agents because they're diving on other relationships for whatever reason,
Yep.
dude, you're out. It's like, where's your stability? You need to have structure, strength, and pillars. So I just like to be very diversified in as many states as I can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love it.
And that's how it goes, man.
Switch topics a little bit real quick
Yeah.
here. So obviously you're dominated at home by just all the female.
That's right.
I've got another daughter on the way.
I know you do, dude.
Talk to me about how you're doing that.
Oh, man, I got the cheat code. So 3 daughters under the age of 9, fantastic girls. The biggest plus side that comes with that is when you've got dual sex household kids, you're scrambling like a maniac on the weekends because you got baseball, gymnastics, hockey, football, soccer. Like, dude, it's mad. So it's actually easier when it comes to that because you're like, let's go cheerleading. And you're done. You're like, let's go color.
Yep.
Right? So you get a lot of coloring done. Plus, what I love about girls is they're very sharp, unbelievably sharp in those young ages.
Yep.
Last year, my kids missed 3 weeks of school around Christmas, 5 weeks total. If I had boys, I would have held them back. No doubt about it, right? But for me, the cheat code was I have 4 older sisters and no brothers. So I'm used to it, dude.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
my biggest challenge there is like finding patience. But I tend to do pretty good with it. So, I guess I'm lucky because I grew up around it.
Yeah. Well, I commend you, and I'm always looking to how you're handling it because I'm definitely well on my way there. So.
Yeah. The scare for me is like if I go again, I'll probably have twin girls and I'll 5. Yeah, so I think it's very rewarding. It's almost to the point where it's so rewarding that it can become challenging for your wife.
Yep.
Because your girls are just all about dad, So, but we have our moments.
If you wanted to leave people with one little momentum, why would people work with Anthony?
I think my biggest value, multiple values across those different pillars. But for real estate agents, the way that I educate your clients, inevitably, they will buy in half the amount of time that it takes with a different lender. They won't waste your time in the car. When they come to me, I don't just pre-approve them on a price. I pre-approve them on a broad range, and they know exactly what's going to happen with their payment when they go up into those price points before they've even seen the house. I'll go back to the agent, and I'll say, hey, they're pre-approved for X, but they can easily qualify for Y. And if they stretch, they can comfortably pay for Z.
Yep.
Show them all and let them see that. They're already going to know what those payments are. And usually they're never going to go to Z, but maybe they go to, Y point part Z, and they just buy fast.
Yeah.
So that's probably my biggest value is. And the reason why I spend so much time doing that up front is because when these clients come back, no questions asked, dude. People just do an application, call me, hey, I just filled out an app. I want to buy this house. Here's your pre-approval, contract in the door.
Yep.
It's like done.
Yeah.
So you got to just invest that time up front, But sometimes I have to get rid of agents because they ruin my life. And so do financial advisors, and so do past clients, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
But I'm a partner. I'm not necessarily here to be like your minion.
I love that.
And
that's exactly how I look at it. I'm not a vendor. Don't ever call me a vendor. I'm a partner.
I know some.
Right. I'm a partner.
They're going to, here's the example of a vendor, right? This happens all the time. People call me a Friday, 8 o'clock at night. They need a pre-approval, like 5:15 at night. They need a pre-approval because they've been working with an online bank. And literally they're on the phone with their loan officer. It's 4:59. 5 o'clock hits. He doesn't need to say bye. He just hangs the phone up.
Yep.
Can you believe that? But they don't need to answer the phone because they're running an interest rate game and their phones are ringing all day. They don't care.
When they're not getting paid on closing that transaction.
No, they don't.
They're just passing it to the next guy and being done with
it. They get $250 a file.
Right. Get it off my desk.
Yeah. So
love it. How can people get a hold of you?
National Mortgage Coach on Instagram. National Mortgage Coach.
Love
It's that easy.
Awesome.
Appreciate you, dude.
Anthony, thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, man. Love being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for sticking around for another episode of Break It Down with Braydon. Stick around. More to come. Thanks, guys.